You forgot your boarding pass. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come?
Before Bad Boys became the breakout buddy cop phenomenon that launched Will Smith and Martin Lawrence into action movie legends, the film was almost an entirely different beast, originally eyed for Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes before the studio pivoted at the last minute. What followed was a chaotic production filled with mishaps, from one of the set's most expensive cars being destroyed and the crew scrambling to secretly replace it, to Téa Leoni being accidentally knocked unconscious and rushed to the hospital. Add in spiraling costs, reshoots, and a schedule so stressful that Michael Bay nearly walked away from Hollywood altogether, and you get a movie that survived pure production hell to become a 90s classic. In this deep dive, we'll unpack how all that chaos somehow forged one of the most stylish, explosive action debuts of its era. So without further ado, let's get into it. Director Michael Bay felt the original script was lacking, so he frequently brainstormed with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence to find ways to punch up the dialogue and story. To capture genuine energy, Bay encouraged the duo to improvise during takes, even resorting to secret directing tactics to spark real reactions. For instance, Bay privately told Will Smith to call Lawrence a bitch right before the car scene. When Lawrence later complained to the director about the insult, Bay simply told him to respond accordingly. This hands-off approach led to some of the movie's most iconic moments, including the entire two bitches in the sea exchange and Lawrence's hilarious comeback when Téa Leoni's character suggested he was gay. The casting journey was a series of major shifts that ultimately defined the franchise. Originally, the lead roles were meant for Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes, but the project changed when Sony purchased the script rights from Disney for $3 million. At that stage, Martin Lawrence was already attached to the film, and the studio's plan was to pair him with Arsenio Hall. However, director Michael Bay saw the massive potential in Will Smith after watching him in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and pushed for him to take the role instead. While Arsenio Hall ended up turning the part down, he has since looked back on that decision as the worst mistake he ever made in his career. During the final days of production, director Michael Bay and Will Smith got into a massive argument over a specific line of dialogue, where Bay wanted Smith to tell Martin Lawrence, "I love you, man." Bay believed this would reveal a softer side to Smith's tough guy character, but on the day of the shoot, Smith flatly refused to say it. The disagreement turned into a heated hour-and-a-half-long standoff that eventually drew in co-stars Téa Leoni and Martin Lawrence. Just as Bay seemingly gave up and told Smith he didn't have to say the line, he pointed at the setting sun and told the actor, "That's nature, and she's not waiting for us." They immediately shot the scene after that, and Smith ended up delivering the line exactly as the director had originally intended.
"I love you too, man." On me looking at me, I said, "Yeah, I love you." I said that shit.
The production of the movie was an incredibly difficult experience for director Michael Bay, largely because he struggled with a screenplay he later bluntly described as a piece of shit. Beyond the script issues, Bay faced tight budget constraints that forced him to work at an exhausting pace. He often had to film complex action sequences in just one day, even though projects with more money would typically take 4 days to shoot the same amount of footage. The financial pressure was so intense that when the studio threatened to cut a key sequence during the film's climax to save money, Bay chose to sacrifice part of his own salary and paid the studio $25,000 to shoot the scene. Another major hurdle was the severe lack of funding available to hire a professional writer for a script overhaul. Bay noted that while a modern screenwriter might earn up to $100,000 for a rewrite today, this film only had a tiny $10,000 budget to address its screenplay issues. To overcome this, the movie was essentially saved by constant improvisation and a grueling daily routine where Bay worked directly with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence to rework the script before filming began each day. This collaborative effort turned a financially strained project into a success through raw creativity rather than expensive studio rewrites. During the filming, actress Téa Leoni was accidentally knocked unconscious by Martin Lawrence's stunt double in a scary on-set mishap. The injury happened because Leone was not standing on her proper mark, causing the stuntman to hit her under the jaw with an AK-47 rifle. The force of the blow was so strong that her legs went over her head, and she landed flat on her back, leaving her with very little memory of the event and requiring a trip to the hospital. Director Michael Bay reportedly freaked out when the accident occurred, and Leone admitted she started to cry afterward because the terrifying experience made her realize just how cold and dangerous the reality of Hollywood filmmaking could be. The gym scene was originally intended to focus only on the interaction between Will Smith and Karen Alexander's characters. However, Michael Bay decided to liven things up by having Martin Lawrence mess around with the equipment in the background. All the funny cutaway shots of Lawrence's character struggling to shadowbox, bumping into gym gear, and fumbling with the speed bag were completely improvised on the spot and added to the scene later. While these moments were played for laughs to make Marcus look clumsy, the reality was quite the opposite. Martin Lawrence was actually an excellent boxer as a teenager in Maryland and even contended for the Mid-Atlantic Golden Gloves Championship. Director Michael Bay recalls a huge argument on set with his line producer, Bruce Pustin, regarding a specific shot of the villain's flaming body being ejected from an exploding airplane. Although the crew was ready to film it, poor weather conditions prevented them from getting the shot, and a week before the movie was finished, Pustin declared that production was wrapped. Bay passionately argued that they couldn't skip it because it was the moment where the audience claps. So he decided to pay $25,000, which was a quarter of his directing fee, out of his own pocket to cover the crew's overtime. When he finally showed the completed shot to the studio, the shot included the check he had written that read, "To Columbia Pictures, from Michael Bay, $25,000, a quarter of my directing fee." The experience was so stressful and frustrating that Bay noted he was actually ready to walk away from the movie business entirely at that point. Michael Bay became so incredibly fond of Miami during the production of the film that he eventually invested in several properties throughout the city. His love for the local atmosphere and scenery made a lasting impact on his career, as he chose to return to the area multiple times to direct later projects. Specifically, he used Miami as the primary backdrop for the high-octane sequel Bad Boys 2, and again for his crime comedy Pain and Gain, cementing the city as a signature location for his filmmaking style. In both his public speeches and his personal memoir, Will Smith has expressed his gratitude toward Martin Lawrence for being the reason he was cast in the film. Since Lawrence received the script first, he had the influence to help choose his co-star, and he revealed on The Ellen Show that it was actually his sister, Ray Proctor, who first suggested he team up with Smith. Lawrence took her advice to heart and pushed for the pairing, a move he now looks back on as one of the best decisions he has ever made in his career, as it successfully launched their iconic partnership. The opening carjacking scene in the movie was actually based on real-life accounts of how these crimes are sometimes carried out, specifically using a beautiful woman to distract drivers before the theft occurs. This sequence was not part of the original cut, but was instead one of 4 new scenes added to the film after it was shown to test audiences. Because the production was working with a limited budget, Michael Bay even provided his own personal Porsche to be used during the filming of the scene to ensure it looked high-end and stylish. During the filming of the sequence where the Shelby Cobra drives out of the back of a plane, the vintage vehicle crashed once it was off camera, causing a major headache for the production. Because the car was damaged, Michael Bay had to get creative with his filming style, which is why most of the scenes featuring the car are tight close-ups of the villain, played by Cheikh Cario, to hide the fact that the vehicle wasn't fully functional. The crew eventually had to track down and attain a brand new Cobra just in time to shoot the big final chase scene, ensuring the film could end with the high-speed action they needed. For the production of this movie, Martin Lawrence was the more established star and commanded a significantly higher paycheck, earning $6 million for his role. This was exactly triple the salary of Will Smith, who was paid $2 million while he was still making the jump from television to movies. Interestingly, this remains the only film in the entire franchise where Lawrence was paid more than Smith, as Smith's phenomenal success in later years eventually shifted the pay scale in his favor for the sequels. But despite launching a massive action franchise, the original Bad Boys stands as the lowest-grossing entry in the entire series and holds the unique distinction of being the only film in the collection to earn under $100 million domestically at the United States box office and under $200 million worldwide. While these numbers were considered a solid success at the time, especially given the film's relatively small budget, they are much lower than the enormous blockbuster totals reached by the later sequels. The high-stakes final scenes of the movie were filmed at Opa-locka Airport, a location with a deep and intense history involving secret government missions. During the 1950s and 1960s, the CIA used this airport as a headquarters for covert operations across Central America and Cuba, most notably serving as a base for the failed 1961 Bay of Pigs invasion. The site's military significance grew even further in October 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. After President Kennedy declared a national emergency, the airport was designated as the Peninsula Base Command to prepare for a planned invasion of Cuba. And that wraps up this deep dive into Bad Boys, the film that didn't just launch a franchise, it reshaped the entire style of 90s action cinema. From Michael Bay's signature visual chaos to the electric chemistry between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, this movie proved that personality can hit just as hard as any explosion. So if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which moment from this flick still lives rent-free in your head. Until next time, thanks for watching, stay sharp, and we'll see you in the next video.